understand, do you? Hey, man, don't you realize in order for us to make this thing work, man, we've got to get rid of the pimps and the pushers and the prostitutes and then start all over again clean.
Hey, look, nobody's pushing me anyway, okay? I mean, not you, not the cops, nobody, man. I mean, you want to get rid of the pushers, I'll help you. But don't send your people after me.
Oh, come on, John. Can't you see that we can't get rid of one without getting rid of the other? We got to come down on both of them at the same time in order for this whole thing to work for people.
Hey, look, nobody's closing me out of my business.
With God's name, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer, I want to thank you all for joining me for another episode of Blac-Vocracy, where we try to provide some insightful information that we can use on our day-to-day operation. I thank God for allowing you all to pull up a chair, take a seat, and just vibe with me with this information that I want to share today. I thank God for keeping our minds intact and blessing us with another week that we can look back on and know that our work is undone and know that our work has not been completed. And so this is why I offer platforms such as this, Blac-Vocracy, which is one of the major reasons why I got in this space in the first place. So as I like to always say before I even start out, is with God's name, the merciful benefactor, that I'm able to even do this. So today I want to talk about this noble and gallant effort towards reparations. I believe it was the brother named Tariq, if I'm not mistaken, that have continued to march on towards a petition that benefits us all if we're able to get it done. Reparations I'm speaking about, because I think it's time that the United States government do pay what they owe the children of former slaves. Since they have cut the check in the past, I believe that it's time that they cut the check in the future. You know, other countries such as Japan, for them dropping the atomic bomb in Hiroshima, as well as the Native Americans and others. Nothing can justify the African Holocaust, the 100 million lives that was lost across the Atlantic slave trade. So I think that it's time that we get fair and just compensation. I'm not going to be on the, I kind of err on the side of caution. I'm not going to be on the wrong side of history and say that this is an effort that is not warranted or that cannot be successful. I don't believe that. I truly believe that we have an opportunity to put this before Congress, dialogue about what we feel as though is fair compensation, and then we move forward. But now here's the thing. When we talk about the government paying what they owe, what if they feel like they don't owe anything? See, what if they truly believe that they don't owe anything? Because when you talk about the children of the slave holder, well, they will argue that that wasn't our intellectual enterprise. However, you've benefited. You've benefited in this race towards success. The finish, the start line for you all was the finish line. You can't give people or a person a 400-yard head start, and in this case, 400 years, and you're running a 100 meters. And you expect for that person to come all the way around the track and catch you in 100 meters. So this needs to be addressed, and I'm glad. And one of the reasons why I want to do this here on Blac-Vocracy, the podcast, talk about reparations, was because I want to lend my support to those who are, again, gallantly fighting and pushing and urging towards reparations. I don't think that it's a fight or a position of weakness. I think we have a very, very strong case that we can present. And if things are done correctly, I think that they will be able to balance the books and fairly, again, compensate or indemnify the hurt that was caused on not only our ancestors, but the hurt that continues to destroy many communities here in the United States and the African-American community. So I want to go ahead and get into this reparations, and so we can address this matter as it's being placed before United States Congress once again. I talked about reparations, and for reparations for African Americans in this country at times have been exactly that, most talk. And it's talk about a subject amongst politicians. However, it's a topic of debate. It has a far less reaching effect amongst those living in the African American community. Perhaps the very thought of the United States Treasury Department having to balance its books after the Leviathan type payout sends chills down their spine. So that's one of the things I'm pointing out. If they really paid us what they owe, it would totally collapse the system because of all of the interest that we could charge. The same compound interest that they charge when they're doing business, it's all of the injury. You can't really talk about the atrocity, the hurt, the pain, the suffering. It will literally collapse the system, and they know this, which is why they do their very best, or they try to do their very, very best of allowing this to fall on deaf ear. It's the same thing kind of like with the Anti-Lynching Act. How does an act such as the Anti-Lynching Act comes across Congress's desk for these many a year? We're talking way back during the Red Summers of the 1920s, all the lynching and the hanging of African-American people coming home from World War I, World War II in uniform. And then you couple that with convict leasing and Jim Crow, amongst other things. How do you compensate for that? You can't. They know it. I know it. We know it. So I think the hope that most of us should try to assert would be some type of settlement, because you can't pay it all. It's like I was describing the United States Treasury trying to cut a check that they have no money to, because anything they print is all inflation. I hope you all realize that this is a fiat currency, right? And the fiat currency is not backed by anything of intrinsic value. That's one of the reasons why you can't pay the debt off. You never hear a president talking about paying the debt off. They say we got to pay it down. There's a difference. Banks are in business to write loans. If nobody's borrowing, there's no money circulating. Fractional lending. And so they have to pay it down. They can't pay it off. It's like a flat tire. If you pay it off, then who are they to lend to? So again, they pay it down, not off. You know, it's just like a flat tire on the car. Again, if the tire goes without air, you can't move that car down the highway. It's just going to sit there. So that's the way the banks operate. Nobody is coming into the bank and they're writing loans. Then what good is the banks? So no. So what they'll do is pay it down. So this is the issue. I think we need to settle, because they know that they don't have the resources really to compensate us for everything they owe. Because it's like it's way, way over in the $1 trillion. Believe that. So I think the best we probably be able to do is get some kind of settlement. And hopefully we will have the financial literacy that they don't get it back. That's like somebody handing you a check, you turn around, you go buy a depreciating asset, and all you done is just gave the money right back. So I do think that if by chance at some point this comes to surface, then I will hope that we will be well equipped mentally to be able to take such founded resources and invest that properly and accordingly so we can start to try to create generational wealth. So again, the idea behind reparations, many people say, started with a lady by the name of Miss Callie House. So this is no new phenomenon. This was actually started a little bit after the Emancipation Proclamation by a former slave by the name of Miss Callie House. She petitioned the United States government for relief for former slaves. And of course, by her petitioning the United States government, you know what they did? They had her arrested for mail fraud. So she had to go to prison for 1 year for mail fraud because she petitioned the United States government for reparations. And then after her, years later, gentleman by the name of Mr. Foreman, he picked it up. And so there have been others who come to mind, Senator, former Representative, U.S. Representative John Conyers, and even as late as U.S. Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. So this have been a long topic and discussion, but I don't want to see us give up on reparations because I think it's time they pay what they owe. And so I want to share some information with you all regarding the reparations and what I think is on the table still. And I'm just going to read something briefly, and hopefully you all take to it, and it'll provide some information, some helpful information that you can just kind of reflect on, absorb, and hopefully put to action at some point if you deem necessary to join the fight for reparations. I talked about in 2002, there was a federal lawsuit which was filed against a company called Fleet Boston Financial Aetna Insurance Company and the railroad system for the roles they played in providing cheap labor, and perhaps this get resolved. So that was one of the issues in 2002. I believe that the stalemate to reparations may be due to some in white America feeling it as though the Freedom Bureau, and if many of you all are not familiar with the Freedom Bureau, that was something that they concocted after the so-called Emancipation Proclamation, where government came in and tried to clothe and educate black people. Personally, if you study the 14th Amendment, all walks of life, they just brought us through the federal zone and kept us under contract as subjects. But that's another story for another day. We'll cover that in the future on Blac-Vocracy. But let me go ahead and continue. So again, I think that they think that it's something like Freedom Bureau, which was enacted after the Civil War to help transition former slaves, as I stated. Now, if this is truly their thinking, then reparations will never become a reality. It just won't. If this is their thinking, that you did enough by the Freedom Bureau, then reparations won't become a reality. And I hope and pray that I'm wrong. Hence why most African Americans chooses to leave the battlefield for reparations. I get it. You get tired of someone urinating on the top of your head telling you that it's water. And so a lot of us choose to go ahead and leave the battlefield of reparations. But it's only just a test of your spiritual stamina. And I think that we should fight to continue this fight. As long as you're in the fight, at least you're fighting. But the minute you leave the battlefield, the fight is won by the other party. Even if generations after us pick it up. This is what our ancestors hoped and prayed for years ago. So we got to stay on the battlefield towards reparations. I am one who believes that you fight for what's right until the sound of the last bell. If you truly believe in reparations and what was done to our ancestors, and that they have unfairly, have compensated other countries, as I mentioned earlier, even in the Holocaust, right, over in Germany, they received some form of compensation. Then again, all of the lives that jumped over those slave ships because as my man Killmonger said in the first movie of Black Panther, that he'd rather have death than be a slave. So they knew, because they knew that death was better than bondage. So throw him over into the ocean like his ancestors. So we got to be able to hear the voices and the cries of the blood of the dirt and soil in this land. Hear it, listen to it. If you got to get on the ground and put your ear to the earth, do that. And understand the blood stains that are still leaking on the grounds of the United States with our ancestors' blood as we built this country, whipped and hung and viciously made dehumanized, castrated. So I think the fight has to continue. We can't give up. Again, we have to continue to fight until the last bell. And I will hope that new bills will be asserted year after year at every congressional session until this issue gets resolved. Again, this country, as well as England, should pay what it owes. It's just as simple as that. And why do I say England? Well, let me just share this with you. I say England because they too was a co-conspirator in helping destroy the countenance of African-American people. Yeah, they was involved in it too, because you got to understand that England is the country that set up the United States, who gave the United States the charter under King George. Okay, so they was co-conspirators and they benefited from it. And last I checked, that a conspiracy under the federal government, Title 18, 371, states that if two or more join into, come into an idea to commit a criminal act, that's a conspiracy. Two or more. Two or more. You can't commit a conspiracy only by yourself. It has to be two or more. So yes, they was co-conspirators, and they must fess up and help America, compensate, because they're the banks anyway. Just look up the word LIBOR, L-I-B-O-R. You know what that acronym stands for? The London International Bank Offering Rate. That's not in D.C., the District of Columbia. That's over in England. Look it up. So they already understand that the debt has to be paid. It's just us filing some type of claim for which we seek relief. No claim, no resolve, no funding. You have to petition a claim according to civil law on the Title USC 12. So let me continue. It is a known fact that America's charter was set up by England, as I stated, which also, as they were speculating, led to the British coming over here in 1812. You ever studied the War of 1812, which many say that the Americans won the war. No, that was a settlement of agreement. If you go to the United States now, I think they have, if they haven't taken it down, there's a picture hanging up somewhere in the rotunda where the British soldiers are actually getting back on the warships with the guns in their hands. Now, I'm no military guy, but I'm quite sure if you were to ask many people who served in the military, what army do you know that goes to war with another army and they allow the other army, after being defeated, to carry their weapons off with them? Doesn't happen. It's just like when we went over in Desert Storm and got the best of those people over there, we made them lay down their guns. You don't give them back their weapons. So when you go see this painting, like I said, in D.C., in the Capitol, if they haven't taken it down, ask yourself the question, who really won the War of 1812? So there was a settlement and a commercial agreement that was made. A commercial agreement that was made. And it was about protecting England's commercial interests. You know, plain and simple. And this is why the Treaty of Paris in 1783 was signed. See, that was the agreement, the contract, if you will. The Treaty of 1783 that was signed. That came to an agreement between the British soldiers, England, and the United States. This is why they're allies with one another. There can be no profits when anarchy and chaos exist. So that's what the settlement was about. More than anything, you can't have commerce if there's chaos and anarchy. Businesses will close down. You can't get anything done. Now, all this talk of nuclear weapons and blazing missiles is exactly that. It's just talk. They're not going to do anything because they love the dollar bill entirely too much. Also, I do believe that it is foolish thinking that the British East and Royal African companies seized in having an interest in the slave trade after a congressional enactment to halt the importation of slaves in 1803. You know, they started doing it on the black market. They were supposed to have put an end to slavery, or at least importing slaves from Africa in 1803. But they were still doing it. Piracy. They were still finding different routes that they was trying to take. This is when you get into maritime law. Maritime law. High crimes that are committed on the ocean. Okay? Anytime governments come together to work out peaceful negotiation, you better best believe that agreements are being made. And in America's case, the British wasn't negotiating from a weak position. I always talk about that. You can't, if you're going to win, you better negotiate from a strong position, not a weak position. Britain was not going to sign an adhesion contract. At that time, wherever the sun was set, so was the British Empire. And that's the saying. Wherever the sun set, so was the British Empire. Baltimore, Maryland is still named after Lord Baltimore to this day. So just in case you already know why Baltimore is named Baltimore, Maryland, it's because of Lord Baltimore. Okay. And that title is won by 6 members of the Calvert family. Calvert, C-A-L-V-E-R-T, the Calvert family. Look that up. The Calvert family who founded the colony of Maryland. That's who founded Maryland, the Calvert family. So yes, they should all be indicted, even by international law, and paying what they owe. Again, reparations is not some handout or self-entitlement, but it is a right shared by a majority of African-American people, those who haven't forgotten the high crimes committed against another group of people. As I mentioned in earlier writings, we should never allow the African Holocaust to be dismissed or forgotten. The Jews don't let you ever forget about their Holocaust, so we should do the same. We should never allow the African Holocaust to be forgotten. We just shouldn't do it. Those who haven't forgotten, who are still in the fight, I do believe no amount of money would ever efface them to disembark on this journey. Okay? So we need to understand this throughout American history. Now, let me say this. Having stated my position, I now want to pose a question. I want to pose a question. And the question is this. What if, and I'm asking you all this, what if the reparation check was cut tomorrow? What would you do? What would you do? If they gave us the reparation check tomorrow, what would you do? I mean, would you run out and buy the latest Air Jordans or the LeBron James or Steph Curry's? What would you do? Or how about those shiny new rims for your car? Or this shiny jewelry that goes on your hand and around your neck? I mean, what would you do? Maybe you would buy out the clothing stores while throwing a wild party and making it rain inside the club. Yeah, some of us will do that. Go out, have a wild party while making it rain in the club. And if this is your disposition, this is how you're thinking, then this is why I say we are in desperate need of a Blac-Vocracy. Again, Blac-Vocracy has to do with the dark stages of the intellectual thought before it comes into enlightenment. That's Blac-Vocracy, and it's about self-governing. You have to be able to self-manage you before you can ever think about managing anything else or managing anything else for someone else. You have to be able to self-govern you first. That's what Blac-Vocracy is about. So yes, we're strongly in need of a Blac-Vocracy. But of course, recognizing this type of response represents only a certain group of African Americans. Many Black people, without question, would invest in things that holds value and yields a greater return. I know we have some people out there. Financial literacy is something that I've always ingratiated myself in since the late 90s and have even grown throughout the years. And I see more and more programs such as Earn Your Leisure being one of them. I think those guys do a great job of getting information out there. And the other brother that does the stocks and trade, the Trap House, I think those brothers do a great job of sharing that information. We have to have financial literacy. We can't be illiterate, because even if they gave us reparation, all we will do is continue to finance on oppression, and then they'll have the money back on tomorrow. So they give it to you on the weekend, and then you broke by Monday, or they give it to you on the weekend, and in the language of Imam W.D. Muhammad, he said they give it to you on the weekend, and you become weak. W-E-A-K, not W-E-E-K. And then they give it to you on the weekend, and then you broke on Monday. So you have to have a financial education. So that's what we want to promote before they cut the check. And if you don't have it, then please, by all means, get with somebody who does. But again, I know many of us would take it and we will hold its value and do something with it, and we would make the right investments, such as real estate, philately. For those of you who don't know what philately is, that's those who are stamp collectors, okay? So real estate, philately, art, stocks, bonds, etc. A lot of different things that are out there that we can invest in, knowing that the descendants of former slaves should be indemnified, but yet possesses no financial debt, and demoralizing on all levels. Basically, what I'm writing. I'm just sharing some information from one of the excerpts of my book. So to be able to have this money and give it right back to them, it would be demoralizing on all levels, knowing that our ancestors was hung, beaten, and brought through some of the most horrendous conditions known to man. So it would be definitely demoralizing on all levels. And I asked the question, why? Why? Because the Jews came out of their holy cause, not complaining, but going to work on the solution. One of the things that I always say, we spend too much time talking about the problem and not working on the solution. We need to get to the solution. That's what the Jews did. Every Jew touched the dollar in their community. They made sure that $10 or whatever it was circled back in their community. And until we understand this, we're going to still suffer from our own ignorance. We have to be able to touch a dollar within our community. We can no longer afford to be consumers. We cannot afford to continue to relegate ourselves in a weak position of negotiation. This is something that we have to understand. I do believe that what catapulted the Jews to the top of the class, this mercantile class family, were two things. Unity and mercantile training, which is commerce or financial literacy training. Those two things, unification and mercantile training. They united on that. For African Americans, this is where it gets a little tricky, because we sow seeds of disunity. I'm going to say it again. While they're sowing unity, we sow seeds of disunity. And we have this, and I'm clear about this. I don't believe, and I'm talking to the original man out there, the one who loves to promote that we are the original people, the original man. Okay, I give you that. Now what? Because if we're going to accept that, and again, we have to accept all the other things too. Then we were the pharaohs that held our own people in bondage. And so if this is the case, then we have been practicing false worship, because we would have been the original people that worshiped the calf when Moses went up into the mount. May God's peace be upon him. We would have been those who worship Baal, the cow. We would have been the one that was committing all type of adulterous acts. We would have been the one who was suppressing other people's intellect. We would be the one that was stirring up tribalism. Yeah, you can't blame that on Europeans, because that existed on the continent of Africa back then. So we have to, if we're going to embrace one, we got to embrace it all. So we're sowing seeds of disunity while they're sowing seeds of unity. And being a part of the mercantile class was a scarce option. And it is a scarce option if we're trying to strive to be a part of that. And why do I say that? Because that old ugly elements or formula that loves to raise its ugly head when we're trying to do something positive. And what am I talking about? Jealousy, envy, backbiting. Yeah, we got to get out of the stupid stuff and look what's really going on. But again, through all our great efforts, and those who didn't have financial literacy, there was those who did have financial literacy, like the Madam C.J. Walkers of the world. Who else we had? Mr. Granville Woods, Lewis Lattimore, Elijah J. McCoy, Mr. Elbert Doc Robinson. And of course, many of us remember Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So we've had people to beat the odds. And truthfully speaking, this was like giving a, I'm going to use this analogy from the comedian, I can't think of her name at the moment, but she used this analogy about giving a tic-tac to a whale. If you think you're going to accomplish anything without unity, that would be like giving a tic-tac to a whale. So again, like these other countries, the nation, when they talk about in God we trust, right? It's not necessarily with white people, but between ourselves. If we don't return to our original nature, then we won't and we shouldn't get any reparations. If we're going to continue to behave the way we behave and destroy our communities and have this disdain for one another, this hatred towards one another, this false worship, and not worshiping the Creator. When I talk about the Creator, there's only one God, one Creator, who created the sun, the moon, and the stars. The first man named Adam and his wife. Whether we say Hua or Eve, who created the worlds we see and worlds that are unseen. That Creator, until we come out of her, this material beast, get back to the fundamentals, we don't deserve no reparations. That's just my take on it. Because God was always there, even in the Genesis. He was telling us then, he's telling us now. And we still are pretty much are doing the same thing. Not all of us, but many of us are still doing the same thing. So we have to understand, idol worshiping. You may not say, well, I don't idol worship. Well, if you're sitting around watching football all day long, watching basketball games all day long, always in the mirror, always down there buying hair, yeah, your mind ain't on God. That's your deity. Whatever you give your mind to, whatever you give your mind to, I don't care if it's paying bills, going to work, your career, whatever you give your mind to, that becomes your false worship. We call it the idlah. That's your idlah. That becomes your deity. Because why? You're giving more of that concern than you are the Most High God. And that's why Scripture says, even in Bible language, pray without ceasing. That's why in the example that Muhammad the Prophet, presence peace be upon him, left, he prayed 5 times a day, praying without ceasing. Yeah, you want to give God your focus more so than anything. Because again, what profits a man or a woman that you will gain the whole world but then lose your soul? Yeah, you got your great career, you got your nice vehicles in the driveway, sitting in the garage, but you've lost your soul. Nah, don't take that devilish, or some may even say Illuminati oath. Don't lose your soul. Fight for what you believe in. Fight for the reparations. But let's be clear about something. That we're not taking any of this with us. I think one of the main reasons why we continue to fight is for our posterity and future generations. Without question. Without question. So again, of course, we know that most of the people have a rebellious nature, and gold has always been its real money of choice. Gold have. I think that when compared to the 2 cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, they look like a daycare center. America does. When you compare what goes on in the United States of America, it makes Sodom and Gomorrah, those 2 cities, look like a daycare center. And must I even start to go down that path? This country here is operating in the reverse, because what looks right side up is really upside down. And what's upside down looks right side up. You know, they done went out and hijacked the rainbow now. The very rainbow that God set the covenant with Noah after the flood. You know, metaphorical language, but yet and still. How do you take something out of nature? But they've been doing, that's the Sharia. Min Sharia. Seeking discord in the Sharia, in the things that are uncreated. So they go into God's creation, they start picking and extracting things out of that creation. See, we have to be real careful about what's really going on. You know, they take a man, they start tweaking with him, you know, and now all of a sudden, you know, they tweaking to see if, you know, there's a way that he can't have a child. If we take this out, maybe he can have a baby if we did this. Be very careful. The Min Sharia. Yes. So, again, it makes the city of Sodom and Gomorrah look like a daycare center. And although on some levels we've done a magnificent job in being restorative, we still have a ways to go. And if left alone on an equal playing field, as I don't have it right here in front of me at the moment. Yeah, I do. Well, you see it in the background too. And I'm going to read some chapters out of this. For those of you all, I wrote this because the field is not level. And I wrote the book, The Field That Wasn't Level. You can get this book at Amazon.